Alright, we are going to talk about a section that I think you guys have talked about before. Again, a lot of these last couple of sections that we're going to do are just all going to be mostly review, but just with a little bit of elaboration. Congruent, I think you guys know, are figures which have the same size and shape. So not just the same shape, that's what we would call similar, but also the same size. And then corresponding parts are things that we look at to determine if the figures are congruent. Corresponding parts are parts in two or more figures that match or correspond. So if you were to orient the figures in the same way, they're the ones that are going to be in the same location, they're the same angle, the same side, things like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of examples in using congruent figures and identifying and naming congruent figures. Okay, so if we look at two triangles, so looking at a figure like this, in order to identify corresponding parts and if it's congruent or not, you want to look around and see, are the same angles and sides in order, and are they congruent to something in the other shape? So for instance, we have this side is congruent to this side because we have one tick mark. So then we look and we go around to this outside one. We have one angle and one angle marking. Then we come to the 3 and the 3, the 2 and the 2. So because they go in the same order, we know corresponding parts are congruent. If corresponding parts are congruent, that means both triangles are congruent. So we name these by corresponding parts. So we would say triangle JKL is congruent to, and that's equals with a little tilde above it, is congruent to triangle. Now, the one that corresponds to J is R. So we'd say R. The one that corresponds to K is S. And the one that corresponds to L is T. So angle L is congruent to angle T, K is congruent to S, J is congruent to R, which means JK matches RS, JK, RS, JL, RT, JL, RT. Notice everything's in the same order, the same relative location. So that's the important part when you're naming them. You want to make sure that they're in the same order, that the angles match, and the sides are also matching. So if they ask you to name corresponding parts, some of the questions in the homework may ask you to name corresponding parts. If they ask us that, the angles, we would say angle J is congruent to angle R, angle K is congruent to angle S, and angle L is congruent to angle T. And then we have to go through and do the sides. We would say that JK, side JK, is congruent to RS. And then we'd have KL is congruent to ST. And then LK, and again, make sure they're in the same order. So L is with T, so then that would have to go TR, not RT. So again, just making sure that everything is in the same order. Alright, so if I have a couple of different triangles, I want to determine if they're congruent. So if I have a triangle like this, so looking at examples like this, they're oriented differently. Now, my drawings don't make them look very congruent, but we want to go around and see, again, are they in the same order and are they congruent? So the side between the angles marked with 1 and 2 is 5, 2 to 3 is 7, 2 to 3 is 7, and 3 to 1 is 9, 3 back to 1 is 9. So because they're in the same order and the same sizes, we know they are indeed congruent. So then we can say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle. Now A corresponds with E, B corresponds with D, and then C corresponds with F. So you have to make sure it's not just alphabetically. You have to make sure that these letters and angles match up with these letters and angles. So it's important that we're doing that correctly. Okay, so it's not just alphabetical. You want to pay close attention to which angles match up with which angles. And again, we could name corresponding parts. A matches E, D matches B, and C matches F. And then side AB would be side ED, BC would be DF, and then CA would be FE. So then we just go around and do those as well. So that kind of concludes this one. It was just a brief review of congruency and naming congruent triangles and their corresponding parts. Again, in order to adequately prepare you for where you'll head next.